The sun beat down on the city streets as David Lawson shuffled along the sidewalk, his tattered coat hanging loosely over his frame. His face, hidden beneath an overgrown beard and dirt-streaked skin, looked no different from the countless other homeless men that society ignored. But what no one knew, what no one could know, was that David wasn't just another man struggling to survive. He was the billionaire CEO of Lawson Enterprises, a real estate empire that owned half the city. And today he was on a mission. No chauffeur, no expensive suit, no security detail, just a worn-out backpack, an old pair of boots, and a purpose. David had spent months hearing rumors, landlords mistreating tenants, security guards abusing their power, managers turning away those they deemed unworthy. He needed to see it for himself, to experience the world through the eyes of those his company was supposed to be helping. As he approached the grand entrance of Lawson Towers, the very building he had spent years developing, he spotted a man in an expensive navy blue suit standing near the front doors. Patrick Grayson, the building's manager, a man known for his ruthless approach to keeping the property clean. David barely made it onto the marble steps before he felt a firm hand on his chest. "You lost, old man?" Patrick sneered, his lips curling in disgust. David looked up, his tired eyes meeting the manager's icy stare. "I was hoping to rest in the lobby for a few minutes. It's hot out here." Patrick laughed. Cold, mocking sound. "Rest? In this building? You must be joking. We don't let bums like you loiter around here. You're making the place look bad." David kept his voice calm. "I'm not asking for money, just a moment of shade." Patrick's expression darkened. "And I'm not asking you to leave. I'm telling you to. Get off my property before I call security." David sighed, glancing at the lobby behind him. He had built this place from the ground up. The polished floors, the crystal chandeliers, the fine leather furniture. His money had paid for it all. And yet, here he was, being tossed aside like he was worthless. "This building belongs to someone with power," Patrick continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Men who work hard, who actually matter in this world. Not useless beggars who leech off society." David clenched his fists, but he forced himself to remain silent. "Not yet." Just then, two security guards emerged from the lobby. Big, intimidating, armed. "Sir, do we have a problem here?" one of them asked, eyes narrowing at David. Patrick smirked. "Yeah, we do. This old vagrant thinks he can just walk into my building. Get him out of here. Now." David barely had time to react before rough hands grabbed his arms, dragging him down the steps. The people walking by barely spared him a glance. To them, he was just another homeless man being removed from private property. Nothing unusual, nothing worth fighting for. He stumbled onto the pavement, his knees scraping against the concrete. Patrick stood at the top of the stairs, dusting off his suit as if David's presence alone had tainted him. "Don't ever come back here again," he sneered. David lifted his gaze, his eyes steely despite his disguise. "You sure about that?" Patrick scoffed. "Positive. You step foot here again, I'll make sure you regret it." David bit back a smirk. Oh, he was counting on that. As he picked himself up and walked away, one thought echoed in his mind. Tomorrow, Patrick Grayson would wake up to the biggest mistake of his life. The next morning, Patrick Grayson arrived at Lawson Towers, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floors as he strolled through the grand lobby. A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. He loved this feeling: power, control, watching the wealthy elite of the city come and go while ensuring that filth, like that bum from yesterday, never tainted his pristine domain. As he adjusted his tie, a security guard approached him, looking uneasy. "Sir, there's a situation," Patrick arched an eyebrow. What kind of situation? The guard swallowed hard. The owner is here. Patrick frowned. The owner? You mean Mr. Lawson? The guard nodded. He's in the conference room, and he's requested your presence immediately. Patrick's chest swelled with excitement. He had never met David Lawson in person. The billionaire was notoriously private, rarely making public appearances. Patrick had only seen his name on company memos and board announcements. This was his chance, his opportunity to impress the most powerful man in the company. He straightened his suit, smoothed his hair, and strode confidently toward the conference room. As he stepped inside, he was momentarily blinded by the massive floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. Seated at the long glass table with his back turned was a man in a sharp, custom-tailored suit. The chair swiveled slowly, and Patrick's breath caught in his throat. It was him, the homeless man from yesterday. Patrick blinked, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. But there was no mistaking it. The same piercing eyes, the same chiseled features. But this time, instead of tattered clothes, he wore an immaculate, dark blue suit that probably cost more than Patrick's entire annual salary. Mr. Grayson, David said smoothly, his voice calm but commanding. Have a seat. Patrick hesitated. His heart pounded in his chest. How was this possible? He lowered himself into the chair, his hands trembling slightly. I think there must be some mistake, sir. I don't understand. David leaned forward, clasping his hands together. No mistake. You see, Patrick, I own this building, this company. Everything you see around you, it belongs to me. He let the words sink in before continuing. And yesterday, I decided to see how my employees treat those less fortunate. Patrick's mouth went dry. He wanted to speak, to explain, but no words came. What I saw, David continued, was a man drunk on his own self-importance, a man who mistook his position for power, a man who judged people by their appearance and discarded them like garbage. Patrick swallowed hard. Sir, I didn't know it was you. David's eyes hardened. And if it wasn't me? If it had been a real homeless man? What then? Would you have still treated him like dirt? Would you still have thrown him out like he was nothing? Patrick opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no answer. David leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. You see, Patrick, I built this company with one core value, respect. Respect for every human being, regardless of their status, their wealth, or their appearance. What you did yesterday was a violation of everything I stand for. A heavy silence filled the room. Patrick could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. Sir, he finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. I made a mistake. I was wrong. David studied him for a long moment, then reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small, black leather folder. He slid it across the table. Patrick hesitated before opening it. Inside was a termination letter. His name was printed in bold letters at the top. His stomach dropped. Sir, please. David stood up, buttoning his jacket. Your employment at Lawson Enterprises is officially terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The doors opened, and 2 security guards entered. Patrick shot to his feet. Wait, please. I can change. I'll do better. David fixed him with a stare so cold it sent shivers down Patrick's spine. You had your chance. Now you'll learn what it's like to be on the other side. Patrick turned, pleading with the guards, but they remained unmoved. They took him by the arms and led him out of the conference room. As he was marched through the lobby, past the same employees who once greeted him with respect, He saw the way they looked at him now. With pity, with judgment, with the same disdain he had once shown to others. The moment the glass doors shut behind him, the reality of his situation hit him like a freight train. He was unemployed, his reputation destroyed, and the man he had underestimated had just turned his world upside down. But as he stood there, reeling from the consequences of his arrogance, he failed to notice the man in the dark car parked across the street, watching him closely. A man who had been waiting for this very moment. A man who had plans for Patrick Grayson. The courtroom is packed. Whispers ripple through the crowd as James Carter, the very man they dismissed as a homeless nobody, stands at the prosecution table, his sharp Armani suit replacing the tattered clothes he wore days ago. Across from him, the arrogant CEO, Richard Lannister, now stripped of his confidence, shifts uncomfortably in his seat. His high-powered attorney tries to keep his composure, but the weight of the evidence against them is undeniable. James steps forward, his voice calm yet commanding. Your Honor, what we have here is a textbook case of corporate greed, abuse of power, and systemic discrimination. Mr. Lannister not only mistreated an innocent man but committed fraud at the expense of his employees. Let's break it down. The judge nods, signaling for him to continue. James turns to the jury. The night I was thrown out of Lannister Enterprises, I was not just humiliated, I was ignored. That disregard for human dignity is what allowed this corruption to thrive. You see, Mr. Lannister and his board members have been embezzling millions from pension funds, knowingly cutting corners on safety regulations, and abusing their workers. But they made one fatal mistake. He lets the tension build. They underestimated me. Gasps fill the room as James unveils a stack of documents, detailed ledgers showing the fraudulent transactions. The evidence is airtight. Richard's lawyer flips through them, his face paling with every page. Richard slams his fist on the table. This is ridiculous. You set me up, he growls. James smirks. Oh no. You set yourself up the moment you decided that a man's worth is defined by his appearance. The judge silences the outburst. Mr. Lannister, you will have your chance to speak, she says sternly. The jury watches, enthralled. They've seen courtroom dramas before, but never one quite like this. James continues, his voice steady. I gave you a chance to show basic human decency, Richard. I wanted to see who you really were. You didn't just fail. You showed the world exactly who you are. He gestures toward the massive screen as security footage from that fateful night plays. Richard's voice echoes through the courtroom. Get this trash out of my building. I don't want to see his kind here. The jury members exchange glances. Some shake their heads in disgust. The final nail in the coffin. The prosecution rests, and the defense has little to say. Richard tries to plead his case, but the judge sees through his lies. The verdict is swift. Guilty. As the gavel slams, Richard's once proud face crumbles. James doesn't celebrate. Instead, he approaches Richard with a quiet intensity. I hope you learned something from this, he says, because money comes and goes. But character? That stays with you forever. Richard is led away in handcuffs, his empire in ruins. The very man he cast aside had just dismantled his entire world. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarm James. Mr. Carter, what's next for you? One asks. He adjusts his tie. Justice doesn't stop here. There are plenty more people like Richard out there. And I intend to find them. A satisfied smile crosses his face as he walks away, ready for the next battle. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful and eye-opening stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that inspire and challenge the way we see the world. See you in the next one.